Before this video starts, I would just like to really thank all my subscribers out there for helping me reach 500 subs. I never really thought that we'd get here, but man, look how far we've come. We still got a long way to go, of course, but thank you to every single one of you who've been watching my videos for like the last year. It makes my day talking about the sport we all love. Let's not waste any more time and get into this trade we have today. We have another blockbuster trade, ladies and gentlemen. This ought to be the best deadline I have ever seen in recent times. First Bo Horvat, then Vladimir Tarasenko, and now Captain Ryan O'Reilly. Here we go, guys. The trade deadline shenanigans have just begun, and we have our third major trade of the deadline here. Ryan O'Reilly, the Blues captain, the Blues Conn Smythe winner, and best of all, Stanley Cup champion, is packing his bags to go to the North and join the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto also received that player Noel Acciari in this three-way trade, so let's dissect this move and see what all three teams ended up with. The Blues and Leafs were obviously the two teams involved in the trade, but the third team involved was the Minnesota Wild. The Maple Leafs will receive Ryan O'Reilly, the former Blues captain, veteran forward Noel Acciari, and prospect Josh Pillar. The Blues, on the other hand, will get Mikhail Abramov Adam Gaudette, the Leafs' 2023 first-round pick, and the Leafs' 2024 second-round pick, as well as Ottawa's 2023 third-round pick. Minnesota, who originally traded for O'Reilly, retains 25% of his contract as he goes to Toronto, while receiving the Leafs' 2025 fourth-round pick as somewhat of a thank-you gift. Both O'Reilly and Acciari are set to hit unrestricted free agency at the end of the summer. Now, before we get into our own respective opinions on this move, let's just discuss what this trade will do for all three teams, starting with Toronto. They get two veteran players in Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari. O'Reilly, who's 32 years old, 6 feet tall and 201 pounds, while Acciari is 31 years old and he's 5'10" and 205 pounds. Acciari has been a bottom six forward who has ranged between 10 and 25 points throughout his career, so no surprise if he ends up on the fourth line in Toronto. O'Reilly, on the other hand, will have several roles on the team. Since Toronto already has two elite centers in Austin Matthews and John Tavares, it's very likely that Ryan O'Reilly will be in the bottom six as the 3C. However, given that O'Reilly is a versatile forward, they could possibly move him to the top six, where he can play on that second line with Mitch Marner and John Tavares, and move David Kampf to the third center spot. No matter where he is, Toronto still benefits. They could also see him on the second unit power play, as well as the second unit penalty kill, given that he's played in both roles with the Blues. Toronto also received a prospect from the Wild in Josh Pillar, who's 21 years old, and plays for the Saskatoon Blades in the WHL, and is almost a point-per-game player this season there. Now for the Blues, they got a haul of draft picks and players. They get the Toronto's first-round pick this year, their second-round pick for next year, and Ottawa's third-round pick for this year, while also getting some players in Adam Gaudette and Mikhail Abramov. It's really good that they managed to get two picks in the top 3 rounds for this year, as it's going to be a really deep draft, and they also got something for next year too, which is nice. And not only that, but they also get a bottom 6 player and a prospect at the same time. Adam Gaudette may sound a little bit familiar to some Canucks fans, as well as Hawks and Sens fans. He was the Canucks' 5th-round draft pick back in 2015, and let's just say he's had a shaky career. He started in the 2017-2018 season, where he did not even really do much. He played 5 games and went pointless, so then he went back to Northeastern to get 60 points in 30 games. Then he went back to Vancouver 2 years later, where he would eventually notch his career high of 33 points in the 1920 season before getting traded to Chicago the following year. With the Blues getting ready to move on from some of their more experienced guys, it's very likely that we see St. Louis putting Gaudette in the bottom 6 as somewhat of an experiment to see what he does. The same can be said about Mikhail Abramov, who was the Leafs' 4th-round draft pick back in 2019. He hasn't played a game in the NHL, but he was absolutely great in the QMJHL, where he notched 76 points with Victoriaville and would reach 24 points in 19 playoff games the following year. With the Marlies, though, he has struggled immensely, as last year he only had 28 points in 66 games. However, similar to Gaudette, he's getting a fresh start with the Blues, so it could be very possible that we see Craig Berube putting him in a few games to see what he does. As much as people, mostly Leafs haters, are thinking this trade is a huge fleece by the Blues, I honestly think it's a win-win. Obviously a win-win for the Leafs and the Blues, as the Wild don't really have any part in this, but the timing of this trade could not have been any better. Toronto was pretty much locked in to play Tampa in the first round of the playoffs again, as neither team will really get ahead of Boston in the standings, and I don't really see Florida trying to catch up to Tampa Bay. Therefore, that leaves the Leafs and the Bolts in second and third to fight for home advantage. However, this may not really mean much considering that Toronto had home ice advantage in the first round against Tampa last year, and they still lost at the last mile. And speaking of the last mile, this is why Ryan O'Reilly is such a good move for the Leafs. I mean, you talk about the last mile. This is literally where the Leafs have struggled the most. Every single time we have seen them getting chances to seal a series. You know, we talk about 2018 against Boston and 2021 against Montreal, and even last year against Tampa Bay. They just could not get it done despite adding so many great players to make them a top team on paper. However, one main reason I feel like this is happening for the last few years is that the Leafs have pretty much lacked guys like O'Reilly who have one common trait. They have competitive fire. These guys want to win. They want to be the hero of those big playoff moments, which is something the Leafs have not been able to find. And I mean, look, Ryan O'Reilly is an absolute beast in the playoffs. He led the Blues to Game 7 wins against Dallas and then beating the Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's why he won the Conn Smythe Trophy in 2019. Not to mention, once again, how versatile he is. I know he's not having a great year this season as he's only managed to get 19 points in 40 games, but he has been amazing in the past. We talked about how his defensive skill abilities are insane. Look at how much his offensive skills are too. He averaged above 50 points for 5 straight seasons at one point in his career. He's also, as previously mentioned, an excellent defensive forward, which is why he won the Selke Trophy in 2019. So we should expect Ryan O'Reilly to be on the power play, the penalty kill, and maybe in the top 6. But regardless where he is at even strength, he's going to try to put up points, and he certainly can. He's arguably one of the most underrated two-way forwards the league has seen in ages. On top of O'Reilly, Noel Acciari is having a great season and would gel very well with guys like Pierre Engvall and Zach Aston-Reese, or maybe even Wayne Simmons if he comes back on that fourth line from the Marlies. But the Blues, they have a reason why they can pull out as the winner of this trade. We're seeing how their championship window has pretty much come to an end and that a rebuild around Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas is taking place. I mean, so many guys from the championship team have left. I mean, Schwartz, Perron, Tarasenko, O'Reilly, and now there's talks about Ivan Barbashev getting traded, and the same applies for Colton Parayko. In essence, it's a rebuild forming or somewhat of a retool, but the point being that St. Louis is not ready for the playoffs. They are not in playoff shape. They are most likely not going to make the playoffs this year and would rather like to somewhat tank for a lower draft pick in such a stacked class. They currently hold 3 first-round picks in this year's draft alone, which is why many think Dave Armstrong is the real winner here. He knows how to succeed in the NHL, and he's done it before and would like to continue doing that in the future with a new era of Blues hockey. While Toronto, they haven't experienced any sort of success in ages, so you could make a case for the Blues winning the trade. They could very well get more picks like this if they trade away guys like Parayko and Barbashev, and even Binnington too, if they decide to part ways with him. And I know a lot of Blues fans are upset about the Tarasenko trade and some other moves that were made in the past, but trust me, as a Rangers fan I say this, the return we gave to St. Louis hurt. We didn't want to part ways with our first rounder at all, but we had to if we wanted to get Tarasenko. The Blues got an even better return with the O'Reilly trade, so, fans of the Blues, trust me here. It's the start of a new era, and it's going to be just fine. Just remember how you have 3 first-round picks, a young player in Abramov, and 2 second-round picks for the 2023 year alone. You guys are in good hands. So overall, this is a win-win trade. Sure, you can maybe say that the Blues slightly edge the Leafs here because they have 3 first-round picks to kickstart their future the right way, while Toronto may have an overpaid center on a team that still may not win a series. But as of what I see, every year is a new year for the Leafs, which means more optimism for them to potentially win a series. And for the Blues, well, they can finally kickstart that rebuild that has needed to take place for almost a year now. And so this is a win-win trade. There is really no winner unless Ryan O'Reilly does what he did in St. Louis and win the cup with the Toronto Maple Leafs, which would be immense. Could also go in St. Louis's favor if they get elite tier prospects for all 3 picks. However, the best part would be that they don't pull a 2015 Boston. Before I end the video, I wanted to honestly talk about the captaincy too, now that Tarasenko, the favorite to be the next captain, and O'Reilly, the captain, are gone. That leaves us with a few options, and most likely going to be the next captain, Brayden Schenn, or maybe Colton Parayko, or possibly a younger guy in Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou. Could they ever get it? It'll be seriously interesting to see what occurs, but let me know in the comments what you guys think of this trade. Did the Blues win? Did the Leafs win? What do you guys think will happen? Let me know. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah.